After a lot of panic about taxi strikes on the day we arrived in Rome, and fears that we'd have to cart our suitcases on a series of trains and buses, a car did pick us up at the airport to begin our 5-night visit to the city. Our hotel was in a great position, right next to the Pantheon, and our room at the Albergo del Senato looked right out across the square and the entrance to this fabulous building built in 118 AD. The Pantheon was sometimes incredibly busy, but we could see from our room how many tourists were going in and out, and on this our first day we decided to wait anyway and instead do a bus tour. We enjoyed a scenic walk up to the River Tiber and the Castel Sant'Angelo, thanks to a new hotel receptionist who sent us the wrong way to the place where we could join the bus. Our first stop was to take a short walk to the Spanish Steps, named from the square at the bottom of them, the Piazza di Spagna. Officially it's forbidden to eat, drink, smoke weed or play the guitar there, all of which is totally ignored. But this is Italy, and the one thing that is allowed is flirting. In front of the steps, but created there before they were built, is a fountain in the shape of a ship, to commemorate a small barge that was stranded here on the square itself when the River Tiber flooded in 1598. Rome's most famous and, as you can see, most popular fountain is the Trevi, occupying a little square and closely surrounded by buildings. The god of the sea, Oceanus, rides through a triumphal arch with 2 horses. Legend has it, of course, that whoever throws a coin in the fountain will return to Rome, but it has to be thrown backwards from the right hand over the left shoulder. In an effort to recreate a famous scene from the film La Dolce Vita, when Anita Ekberg and Marcello Mastroianni actually got into the water here, there are tourists who like to do the same, but there's a heavy fine for doing it. And from May 2017, tourists are not going to be able to stop there. Instead, they'll be kept moving and channeled through a one-way walkway around the fountain and forbidden even to sit on the edge. I don't want you filming me while my hair's a mess. That's not straight, is it? On with our bus tour, and we're told that every fountain in Rome, and there are many, is placed at the end of one of the watercourses built by the Romans. This is the monument in honour of Victor Emmanuel II, who was the first king of Italy after unification in 1870. And here we're alongside what's left of the huge Circus Maximus, where the great chariot races took place. 12 chariots would start abreast with either 2 or 4 horses and thunder round the track for 7 laps. Walking back to the hotel after the bus tour, we saw how plasterers in Rome go about their precarious business. The piazza here is always very busy, and where there are lots of people, you always find others who want to make money out of them. Saturday morning, and we're up very early to be at the meeting point for our tour of the Vatican with walks of Italy. Early so that we can be in the Sistine Chapel before the crowds. And the person leading our walk is the charming Angela. She's extremely knowledgeable, great fun, and quite bonkers.
At that time, at the beginning of the year, he already started wonderful
The one place in which we can't film or take photos is inside the Sistine Chapel. To be honest, they wouldn't do it justice anyway. Between 1508 and 1512, Michelangelo painted the ceiling 134 feet long on his own, not by lying on his back as depicted in some films, but standing up, painting above his head with a candle on his hat. The ceiling depicts the story of creation, from Adam and Eve, their sin, the flood, to the drunkenness of Noah. More than 20 years later, he painted the Last Judgment on the end wall. It caused a scandal at the time because Christ and the saints were all depicted naked. But then Michelangelo did like his naked males. Michelangelo had never seen a whale, but he managed this for the story of Jonah. We'd expected the Sistine Chapel to be spectacular, and it certainly didn't disappoint. But neither did the rest of the Vatican. Our visit lasted about 4 hours. We walked miles through corridor after corridor, each adorned with beautiful works of art, and we never knew what we were going to see next. I'm not even going to begin to describe what they all are. There are 4 rooms which form a suite of reception rooms in the palace, and they're famous for their frescoes painted by Raphael and his workshop. They were started in about 1508, at the same time that Michelangelo was working away in the chapel nearby. And so we approach the last part of our visit to the Vatican, St. Peter's Basilica. And first we come to the Porta Sancta, the Holy Door, cemented shut and used only by a pope in Jubilee years, every 25 years or so. Inside, Michelangelo's Pieta is now protected with bulletproof glass after a young man smashed its nose in 1972. And here's the tomb of Pope John Paul II. This is Pope John the 23rd, who died in 1963. Still looking good, though.
These are wonderful.
Just got your voiceover. Outside, and for the first time, we're in the vast St. Peter's Square. It's the end of our tour, and we say goodbye to Angela, who's made the last few hours so special. We thought we'd see more of the legendary Swiss guards, but these were the only ones we could find. They may look ceremonial, but since the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981, they're trained in the use of small arms and unarmed combat. They have to be unmarried Swiss Catholics between the ages of 19 and 30. There are other stories about them too, but we won't go into that now. It was about midday, quite warm in the sun, and by now there were thousands of people queuing to get into the Vatican. This is when we realized what a good thing it was to get up early. Our walk back took us across the river, near the Castel Sant'Angelo, and to a pit stop in a nearby piazza for some ice cream. Not far from our hotel was the Piazza Navona. Until the late 18th century, the rich could look out from their windows and watch the contests and horse races in the square. And to cool the Romans down in summer, the piazza was flooded so that miniature naval battles could be staged here. Back to the hotel, through the crowds of people waiting to get inside the Pantheon. And after a break, we then set off in search of some churches we'd read about. They all contained paintings by Caravaggio, and were all within a few minutes of the square. There's yet another statue by Michelangelo in the Church of St. Mary above Minerva, built over the ruins of a temple dedicated to the Roman goddess Minerva. In front of the church is a curious statue by Bernini depicting an elephant supporting an Egyptian obelisk. It's thought that Bernini got the idea from a 15th century novel in which the main character meets such an elephant. And as you can see, this is just behind the Pantheon, near where we're staying. Sunday morning. Not quite so early as yesterday, though the clocks went forward last night, so we did lose an hour. And our meeting point is just outside the Colosseum, that great emblem of classical Rome. Again, with Walks of Italy, our tour was to take us all over the Colosseum. But first we would have that very special experience of walking out onto the arena itself. It was an eerie experience walking out onto the same spot that we've all heard and read about, where countless numbers of people and exotic animals were killed just for the amusement of Roman citizens. We were delighted that our guide was Angela again, who took us round the Vatican yesterday. We went down below the arena level where gladiators and animals were assembled before their fights and to where their bodies were brought afterwards. A watercourse comes through at this level, used to wash down the blood and guts. About 50,000 people filled this stadium. Angela explained that various types of gladiatorial fights might take place in the mornings. In the afternoons, the gladiators would fight lions, tigers, and other dangerous animals. And by way of a break at lunchtime, and to keep the crowds amused, They could watch Christians and criminals being executed in any way you can think of, and probably some that you can't. It was the Emperor Vespasian who began the construction of the Colosseum in AD 72, and it's recorded that in the inaugural games over 9,000 animals were killed. When you look now at the walls, both inside and out, there are holes everywhere in the stonework that look as if wooden beams or struts went into them. But those holes are where supports went in to hold the travertine marble that coated the whole of the Colosseum. It must have looked magnificent, gleaming and shining in the sunlight.
On top of public buildings. Okay? What if when it's just
The next part of our tour took us to the Palatine Hill, one of the most ancient parts of the city. It looks down to the Roman Forum on one side and the Circus Maximus on the other. Roman emperors lived up here, along with the rich and famous statesmen like Cicero and the poet Catullus. And the hill is littered with the ruins of imperial villas and temples. Below now, the Forum, which evolved from just being a cattle market to a political arena from where the whole Roman Empire was ruled. Again, it would all have been clad in marble and looked very different from the marshy lake it used to be until it was drained. The Forum also served as the culminating venue for celebratory military processions known as triumphs. It was the marketplace, the business district, and the civic centre. There are many temples here, basilicas, magnificent arches, and the rostra, or platforms from which orators would speak to those assembled in the square. Our walk down the hill took us past the Arch of Titus, built to commemorate his victories, including the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD.
there's a clear olive tree, okay? Behind, there's a tall and brown platform. Can you see it? That's the spot used by magistrates, politicians, senators to choose Romans. So that's the spot where the most important.
And this is the spot where the body of Julius Caesar was cremated. As we were finishing our tour, we were aware of quite a noise coming from the road nearby. It was some sort of carnival procession promoting Bolivia. There were no floats, just dancers, and most of them, I have to say, had more enthusiasm than talent.
¡Central Bolivia! ¡Vamos!
In the afternoon, we went inside the Pantheon, the most preserved building of ancient Rome. Markings on bricks show that it was built in 118 AD to honour all gods. Inside are the tombs of Victor Emmanuel and the painter Raphael. But its most striking feature is the open and uncovered dome, which allows the sunlight, and the rain at times, to pour in. Also nearby is a square called the Lago di Torre Argentina. The name comes from a papal master of ceremonies in 1503 who came from Strasbourg. Well, Strasbourg's Latin name is Argentoratum, and the man was known as Argentinus. He built a villa here, and the square is named after him. And in the square is a sanctuary for stray cats, and the remains of 4 Roman temples, and a theatre used for political meetings. And by the wall on the left you can see the tall trunk of a pine tree. That's just about where the steps are to the theatre, and it's on those steps that we're told Julius Caesar was murdered. Don't look at me lurching up the steps. On our last full day we decide to visit the Castel Sant'Angelo. It's built above the cylindrical mausoleum of the Emperor Hadrian. Since 1281 the castle has been connected to the Vatican Palace by a covered passage, so that in times of trouble popes could use the castle as a place of refuge. And this is the angel who the castle is named after. Legend has it that at Christmas in 590 AD, at the height of a plague epidemic, the Archangel Gabriel appeared to Pope Gregory and sheathed his sword, indicating that the plague was over. And it's superstitions like that that have kept the Catholic Church going, even today. Deep within the castle are the apartments used by the popes when they'd taken refuge here. There are also staterooms, storerooms, and some less than angelic torture chambers for heretics, but we didn't get to see them. This is the papal robing room, with its many store cupboards and chests for holding ceremonial wear. From the top ramparts, there are great views across the city and over to the Vatican, even though the weather is starting to get a bit dodgy. It's hard to believe that this was once the tallest building in Rome. Much of the castle is now a museum. There are some fascinating artifacts here, like these medieval guns. What we weren't expecting to find was an exhibition of modern, well, relatively modern, works of art, all by one sculptor, Giacomo Manzù. Manzù was born in 1908. In 1939 he started a series of bronze reliefs about the death of Christ. Before this, in about 1930, he began a whole series of large bronzes of cardinals, and we found these simple conical forms so impressive. But the earlier wartime bronzes brought Manzù a lot of trouble. He was heavily criticised by the Church and by Italy's fascist government because they contained vivid depictions of the Nazi fascist violence. Out of the castle, and the temperature had dropped. We crossed the Ponte Sant'Angelo, decorated with Baroque angels by Bernini, and went in search of a restaurant to find something to warm us up.
I don't care what I look like, I'm cold. Thank you.
This beautiful man, the best man I have met in England.
And it's our last morning as we fly back home in the middle of the afternoon.
They were very happy because they saw it. They got it. So
We said to the guy, ticket office,
Campo di Fiori is here. That means you're going that direction. And the easiest, can I highlight it for you?
I know where
The Piazza Navona.
We check out, leave our suitcases for an hour or so, and go for a walk. This is the Campo di Fiori, not named because it's mainly a flower and vegetable market, but from the flower-covered meadow that was here in the Middle Ages. In the middle of the square, a statue of a Dominican monk who was burnt at the stake here by the Inquisition in 1600. Just a little more time left to sit in the square by the Pantheon, sampling our last gelato. Why the Italians can make such wonderful ice cream and we can't, I shall never know.